In June of 2010, the US Department of Justice arrested 10 Russian nationals at the end of a multi-year investigation into a large spy ring operating around the nation, but especially out on the East Coast.
The FBI's arrested 10 people for allegedly spying for Russia for up to a decade.
Most of them spent decades blending in with American society.
A long-term FBI investigation.
10 suspected sleeper spies.
They just seemed like a nice, quiet family.
This is one of the most famous roundups of foreign nationals acting as unregistered agents of a foreign power in modern US history. And one of them you've probably heard of was Anna Chapman, who became an instant household name, with the media comparing her to a James Bond-style femme fatale. And after she was expelled back to Russia, she certainly capitalized on her new fame, appearing in Maxim.
The saucy spy posed for racy magazine spreads. There are Anna Chapman action dolls. She's moving into politics, has trademarked her name.
She was hosting a show on Russian television. I know, it's so cheesy. She even became a runway model. Now, the story behind this mega spy roundup, which the FBI had codenamed Operation Ghost Stories, it's a pretty fascinating one. But the focus I want to bring today is on a particular piece of spycraft that Russia and many other nations have used that you've most likely stumbled upon without ever leaving your computer. Spies all around the world use a wide variety of tactics to embed themselves within another nation, work their way into the inner circles of their targets, and communicate their findings and discoveries back to the governments who sent them. And the only limit to intelligence agencies' abilities to remain concealed is their own imagination. All right, agents, you ready to have some fun? Let's go. So I'm going to teach you a little bit about how to be a spy right now. And it's actually really super easy, but not a lot of people know how to do this. Now, first, I want you to take a look at these two images here. Look really carefully. See the difference yet? No? Well, that's by design. You see, visually, down to the pixel, these are two identical images with one key difference.
Steganography was a system that we saw developed in the mid-2000s, and it uses special encryption software to digitally encrypt text that's converted into a color photograph that is then put on a web page online. And it's there for anyone to see. So you and I could go on a web page and be looking at a picture with steganography in it and not realize it. It was essentially unbreakable if you don't have the key that the illegals do.
So I want to talk to you a moment about this thing called steganography. By definition, it's simply just a way to hide a secret message within something that isn't secret. Now, to show you what I mean, I've left a little package for you to pick up. And you can do it now, or you can do it later, or you can just skip it all together. It's fine. But I think it's pretty fun. It's just something fun to do alongside this video if you want to participate a little bit. The whole point of this is you'll be able to come away from this video having learned something new, possibly gained a little bit of a new skill set. What I've done is I've turned one of these images from a simple JPEG into a kind of hidden zip file with a few documents inside for you to check out. There's nothing nefarious inside, you don't have to worry about it. But that being said, anytime somebody tells you to download anything, you should always use your own good judgment, do a quick scan, just, be smart in general. So I've left a link in the description to this image file for you to try this on your own. So here's what I did. And if you'd like, you can pause the video if you want to try this on your own and copy the command into your own command prompt. All I'm doing is I'm telling my computer to copy the image file and this zip file full of documents that I've prepared for you, and to create a new copy of the image file with the zip folder embedded within it. So if you follow this link, download the image file. To get the files back out, you just open WinRAR, you right click on the image, you select Show Archive Contents, and voila. But if you want to see what's inside, you'll have to take a look for yourself. So congrats, you now have a brand new spy skill set that you can use to hide those vacation photos. So this is just one of many ways to actually hide messages within an image. One of the simplest ways is to actually encode a message in the pixels themselves by just changing the colors ever so slightly on each pixel. And when you have a large enough image, you might not be able to even see it. And even if you did, you probably wouldn't even think that there was some kind of message embedded within it. Now, take for example these 5 pixels. Color information for each pixel is stored as an HTML code number. The HTML code for black is simply a series of zeros. Now, if I make a simple code and I assign a number to each letter in the alphabet and then manually enter the HTML code in each pixel to reflect a message that I want to send, I can simply instruct someone on which pixels to look at, and as long as they know the correct code, they can extract what I want to tell. And you know, it isn't restricted to just hiding a message in a picture. For example, many elements of alternate reality games that are out there make use of messages or pictures that are hidden within audio. If I wanted to download some special software and convert this image into sound, you can get some interesting effects when you view it through a spectrogram. So these are just a few very simple examples, and there's countless ways to hide secret messages within non-secret media files, and it gets more and more complex the deeper you dig into this.
What you're seeing has never been seen by the American public. This is one of the ways the agency communicates with their spies abroad.
I literally buried the microdot under the O of your name.
Take that little piece of the letter.
Can you see the little block?
Yes. And
there it is.
Oh my gosh.
That's it.
It is so small.
Then the dot is carefully placed on a special plastic lens the size of a grain of rice.
Oh my gosh. All right, wait. I want to see what this is. Joan, you are now behind closed doors at the CIA. That's amazing.
To bring this all back into focus, in the case of these Russian spies that we've been talking about, they would use publicly searchable images that you would find on any website and even find them on Google Images. So how did the US government find out that they were even doing this at all? Well, just as they have spies on our soil, we have spies on theirs. It's just the name of the game. We had a mole inside the SVR, which is the successor organization to the KGB, a man that the intelligence channels had been calling secretively Colonel Sherbakov, who informed the CIA about a vast spy ring that was operating in the United States since the 90s. And he actually named every single one of them that was a part of this. Once the CIA had this critical intel, they actually handed it over to the FBI, who formed a task force to monitor the activities of these reported spies. The codename for this project was called Operation Ghost Stories. They included 10 foreign agents operating as spies on US soil. Now, it's hard to overstate how serious this program was. These people were here for decades in deep cover. They would assume new identities and quite literally become Americans. The level of commitment and dedication that these spies had to their legends, which is their backstory that they fictitiously make, it is incredible the lengths that they went to. They got here, they went through education, they formed whole lives, careers, relationships.
Part of the legend building process is obtaining a mate.
There were some that, I kid you not, they would be assigned as partners to get married and have children. That's insane.
They love each other?
I think so.
They are humans just like us, and they are subject to the same trials and tribulations that life brings on.
And she would call home and ask him, can you pick up the children from the play date? And he would mutter something about being busy, I'm vacuuming or something. And then, we would hear, he's watching The Sopranos.
It really goes to show you how hard it is to actually spot a spy, because they could be any age, gender, ethnicity, anything at all. In fact, you could take a walk outside, go greet your neighbors right now, and no matter what they look like, no matter what backstory you know about them, there is a possibility they could be a foreign agent of some kind. I mean, don't go harass your neighbors. I'm just saying, you could look to your left, look to your right in any situation you are, and that's what a spy looks like. The ultimate goal is that they embed themselves completely within society. So, bringing this back on topic, How did the Russian spies use this steganography to communicate with each other? This is the criminal complaint that was filed against the Russian operatives, detailing how they secretly communicated with Moscow and avoided detection. It took a long time for the FBI to figure out how they were communicating with Moscow. Even after tapping phones, getting 24-hour surveillance on them, they very rarely tipped their hand, even when they were at home alone, when they would be most comfortable. The FBI began doing these covert searches. They would enter their homes with warrants and just secretly search when these people were away. After they had copied all of the files and everything off of the hard drives, off of one of the computers that they had taken a look at, they found this pesky little program that they couldn't really get to open or run properly. It required a 27-character password. Among the items that they found was a box where they kept a lot of their spy gear. And they found a lot of things like journals, shortwave radios, all sorts of things that they were using to communicate with each other. But one of the most interesting things they found was a particular note that you can see right here. FBI investigators suspected that these strange patterns of numbers and letters actually corresponded to a series of keystrokes on a keyboard. Through a combination of brute force and following these patterns on this paper and trial and error, all of those things, they were finally able to break this 27-character password. And what they found was basically like a modern day equivalent of an Enigma machine. This was huge.
For us, that was a game changer. Once we got our own version of their system, we could run a parallel version and read the same things that they were reading.
This was a treasure trove of access direct into Russian code making and code breaking. And these spies could literally pass encrypted messages back and forth to each other in broad daylight, right on publicly viewable images, embedding these messages into images that anybody could have access to, you or I. And what's most important about this software is that this type of steganography, and others like it even existing today, was that even if you knew there was a message in the image, you wouldn't be able to open it or even find out or find any trace of the message at all without this special piece of software that the SVR had built. Once they had this, they had everything that they needed to build a solid case. And by the end of June 2010, headlines burst all over the world as the FBI swooped in and arrested 11 members of this spy ring.
It sounds like something out of the Cold War. The Justice Department said today 10 people have been arrested on charges of spying for Russia.
Justice announced today that 10 alleged Russian spies have been arrested, with another suspect still at large.
Russia is denying that it's been running a major spy ring in the United States.
This photo shows FBI agents in Montclair, New Jersey. 2 of the suspects live here, apparently with their 2 young daughters.
It was great to have a stay-at-home dad. We were all excited about that. He was at the bus stop. I mean, we had no idea. They just seemed like a nice, quiet family.
They will face charges of money laundering and acting as agents of a foreign government.
They allegedly had fake Americanized names. 8 of them acted as married couples.
I've lived here for 30 years, and never did I ever think that we would have some Russian spies here.
But the FBI did, and now Russia is responding, calling the allegations groundless.
U.S. officials intercepted a message from Russian intelligence headquarters meant for 2 of the suspects.
And the message reportedly said, quote, "You were sent to USA for long-term service trip. Your education, bank accounts, car, house, etc. All of these serve one goal. Fulfill your main mission, i.e. to search and develop ties in policy-making circles in U.S. and send intels to sea."
Now that we've kind of talked about the steganography and all that, I kind of want to go back a little bit because there's a really interesting story kind of tangentially related to this. Going back a little bit, who was this mysterious Colonel Sherbakov? Well, after the illegals were arrested, Moscow was pretty furious, and they said that they knew who this person was, who this mole was that they had inside the SVR, and said almost overtly that he was probably going to fall down some stairs.
There is not much to add here. Dmitry Medvedev already said that this is the result of a sellout, and sellouts always come to no good. They end up in a ditch, either drunk or drugged. The other day, one such traitor kicked the bucket, exactly like that, abroad. And there is no point doing it, really.
You mean that you know all the traitors by names?
Of course we do.
So the CIA obviously realized that their mole inside the SVR was in real danger, and they decided to get him out of Russia to resettle him in the United States. About a year later, the Russian government named the mole as Alexander Poteyev and put him on trial in absentia, sentencing him to 25 years in prison.
A Russian intelligence chief has been convicted of treason in his absence by a Moscow court for unmasking a US-based spy ring. Alexander Poteyev, who'd long collaborated with the CIA and escaped to America, was sentenced to 25 years. In a major embarrassment for Moscow, the 10 Russian agents he exposed were deported.
And even though Poteyev got resettled in the US, the CIA had real cause for concern about his safety even being on US soil. Do you remember a few years back where there was that story about how Russian assassins tried to take out a former Russian spy that was living in the UK?
British police are treating the attack as attempted murder. Former Russian spy Sergei Skripal, seen here in CCTV footage, and his daughter Yulia have been in hospital since Sunday, when they were found unconscious on a bench outside a shopping centre in the southwestern town of Salisbury.
His name was Sergei Skripal. And the reason he's important to this story in particular is that during the 90s and early 2000s, he had acted as a double agent working with the UK intelligence service. He was eventually busted in 2004, and the FSB put him in the clink for about 13 years. And when the FBI rounded up Anna Chapman and the other spies that were in the US, we exchanged them in a spy swap with Russia to get some of our people back, one of which was Sergei Skripal, who was working with one of our allies. Well, Russia wasn't exactly a big fan of having Skripal out free. So in 2018, they sent in the cleaners. March 2018, these two men hitched a flight from Moscow to Salisbury, England, where Skripal was living. Through police investigations, they pretty quickly figured out who the hitmen were. You can see them in surveillance footage, and they scoped out Skripal for about 2 days. They learned his movements, they came up with a plan. And then when they found him and they figured out where he lived, they used a small perfume container that they had smuggled into the country, and they applied a nerve agent called Novichok onto Skripal's front door handle. And then they immediately hightailed it out of there, jumping on the first flight back to Moscow from London's Heathrow Airport, just as Skripal and his daughter Yulia were found unresponsive on a park bench. It is really hard to overstate how deadly this nerve agent Novichok is. According to the research I did, you could take no more than a spoonful of this stuff and kill thousands. To really illustrate how deadly this Novichok nerve agent is, months later, his neighbor was around and she found a discarded perfume bottle, thinking it was trash, picked it up, didn't really think anything of it. She died, and her partner fell ill and had to be hospitalized. Well, the UK government was pretty pissed and charged the two men with attempted murder and the murder of the neighbor who had died after handling the Novichok. And Russia's response to this is where this kind of takes a wild turn, because they really threw their hands up in the air and said, whoa, 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 these two guys that are obviously assassins, they're not assassins, they're not spies, they're just civilians, they're tourists. And the two hitmen, who you would expect would just recede into the shadows and never shine their face in the light of day ever again, they did the dumbest thing imaginable and did a full interview on RT, claiming that they were just tourists.
What were you doing there?
Our friends had been suggesting for a long time that we visit this wonderful town.
Salisbury? A wonderful town?
Yes.
There's the famous Salisbury Cathedral, famous not only in Europe, but in the whole world. It's famous for its 123-meter spire. It's famous for its clock, the one of the first ever created in the world that's still working.
It's famous for its 123-metre spire. They sound like they're reading directly off the Wikipedia page for Salisbury. Oh, why do I love Salisbury? It's simple. The population is 40,302. And the Member of Parliament is John Glenn, a Conservative whose 8-year tenure has been widely viewed as a failure, open brackets, citation needed, close brackets.
Oh, and we have no idea why the London hotel room we stayed in had traces of military-grade nerve agent known to be made exclusively by the Russian government. So this whole situation with Sergei Skripal gave the CIA a pretty good scare, because if Russia was willing to brazenly attempt an assassination on another country's soil, why wouldn't they do it in the US? So that meant every one of the 100 or so on the super secret CIA witness protection program was in danger. All the news publications mentioned that Alexander Poteyev's whereabouts were a really closely guarded secret, and the CIA was going from top to bottom on their program lists of turned spies to see what they could do to better protect them all and shore up security. And if there ever was a list, Alexander Poteyev was almost certainly on this list, being one of the most damaging double agents Russia's ever had, after he shut down a huge program with decades of resources and manpower poured into it. The CIA actually mentioned in a New York Times article that about 4 years prior to this, they had a pretty big scare where a known Russian hitman had come to Florida where Poteyev was staying and actually showed up to his house. They don't know whatever really happened to it, or they didn't say, but they evidently had kind of a close call, so they had plenty of reason to be scared. And then in July of 2016, Russian state television, citing intelligence from the CIA, abruptly announced his death, which was not only news to the CIA, but adding even more confusion, the report stated pretty clearly that they had themselves a lot of doubt that the CIA was telling the truth when the CIA wasn't even advancing the story to begin with.
Сегодня из США пришла новость о смерти Александра Потеева, бывшего полковника службы внешней разведки, заочно осужденного в России на 25 лет заключения за госизмену. История предательства Потеева вышла громкой. В 2010-м он бежал в Америку, где выдал целую группу российских разведчиков-нелегалов, которых потом пришлось обменивать. Именно ценность информации, переданной Потеевым, заставляет сейчас усомниться в его смерти. Таких нужных перебежчиков часто прячут, объявив мертвыми. Что, впрочем, не означает, что в действительности они здравствуют и процветают. О печальных и поучительных судьбах предателей из США Валентин Богданов.
Когда появляется информация о смерти такого известного перебежчика, сразу доверять ей у разведчиков, как правило, не принято. Слухи о кончине предателя могут оказаться несколько преувеличены, и степень преувеличения тут напрямую зависит от того, насколько полезен он был новым хозяевам. Александр Потеев из таких. В сети лишь две его фотографии: безупречная родословная, отец ветеран войны и герой Советского Союза, афганская молодость, там Потеев начинал в спецназе КГБ, он же времен пика профессиональной карьеры.
Его карьерный рост был крайне удачен. И почему он стал на этот путь предательства? Тут одно только объяснение. Полностью переродился человек. Вместо каких-то идеалов, которых он был воспитан, служение родине, там, стране, деньги, нажива.
Некоторых предателей так, жил себе тихо, думаю, что вообще у них этого комплекса страдания нету. Они, наоборот, говорят, мы счастливы, что живем на Западе, дышим свободно. Предатели – это психология болотной вши.
Потеева не перестанут искать. Предатель по-прежнему числится в международном розыске. Он заочно приговорен к 25 годам. Никаких официальных документов о том, что лишенного звания и наград бывшего полковника СВР уже нет на земле.
Well, it turns out the news program was telling that story as a ruse to try and get him to contact his family. They figured if he contacted his loved ones back in Russia, it would reveal some kind of contact information or some kind of trail for them to follow. Or was it? Because to add even more to this, a few months later, BuzzFeed News came out with an article telling a story about Poteyev going to a Walmart in Florida to apply for a fishing license using his real name, his date of birth, address, phone number, email, everything, the full docs. And not only that, he registered as a voter using his real information, his birth name. So whatever is going on, he doesn't seem too worried. Journalists have actually been following up with this story, trying to get in contact with Poteyev. They've even showed up at his house, got in contact with relatives.
Photo print, SD card.
Are you in need of any assistance today?
But I don't need any help. So he's obviously not too worried about Russian assassins, but he's avoiding the news media like the plague. It makes no sense to me, but it's a really wild story. So that's kind of the end of the story with Operation Ghost Stories. The thing about the espionage world is that it's sometimes pretty small, and so many of the stories are interconnected, and it's really hard to tell a complete story without telling a dozen more. But one thing's for sure, if a country is hiding something, another country is going to do what they can to figure out what it is. Us included. Thank you for watching. Out of the darkness, we can all find light. But for now,